Good afternoon. It is once again Friday at 5:30 p.m. here in the great city of Chicago, home of the Big Shoulders, the stacker of wheat, city that sits beside a small lake. Some folks would call it a big lake, Lake Michigan. But it's a city where all your hopes and possibilities and dreams and ideas can come true. I love this city. I love Chicago. With all of its problems, all of its issues, all of its problems, all of its needs, all of its hopes, aspirations, I still love Chicago. And I don't think I'd want to live anyplace else. It would be very challenging for me, or difficult, to just pick up stakes and move to anywhere other than here in the great city of Chicago. I hope you like where you live, because if you do, you're already ahead of the game. If you don't, then you ought to try and figure out everything that you can possibly do to make Chicago the place where you want to be, since that's the place where you are. We are part of the most interactive television in America. Hotline 21, Chicago Cable Access. And we say that because you have the opportunity and the ability to chart the course, to not go where others have been, but if necessary, to go where there is no road and pave a path, to discuss the inner thoughts and the inner workings of your heart, your mind, and your soul, to listen intently to your neighbors and other people who will be doing the very same thing. And to think that I get an opportunity to be with you most Fridays. Sometimes I get caught in Washington and just can't get here in time. But most of the time we manage to make it, and I am delighted. I have in the studio with me a young lady who is engaged in community organizing, community activating, community stimulating, trying to share some of the thoughts and ideas that she has relative to how do we make the world in which we live a more livable world. And so I'm going to ask her to just introduce herself to you, and then she and I are going to be prepared to listen to what you've got to say, share some things we've got to say, and spend the next 20 minutes or so doing so. So would you please go right ahead? It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you. Well, hello, and my name is Amalia Israel, and I'm a philosopher. I was raised in Oklahoma, but I've been here in Chicago for the last 8 years. And I have done extensive research on the Black family and just trying to figure out what can we do to make our communities better. And basically I just found that we just got to work on the Black family.
Well, let me ask you, starting out with your name, does it have a special meaning?
It sure does. It's actually a Hebrew name.
It's a Hebrew name?
Yes, from the Bible. There was a king named Amaziah, and it means made strong by Yah.
And how do you spell it?
It's spelled Amaziyah.
And this particular king, was there anything special about him?
Well, what I liked about him is that he was one of the righteous kings. You know, there was a lot of turmoil at that time in Israel, but he was one that was righteous, so that's what I like.
He was a righteous king. Mm-hmm. And there was another guy named Hezekiah who was a good king. Mm-hmm. And he was actually supposed to die. But then, because he had been good and followed the commandments and all those kind of things, mm-hmm. good Lord gave him another 15 years in which to live.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are people, if you are good
Right.
and eat the right stuff, think the right stuff, and act the right stuff, you may live 15 more years,
That's true.
or maybe 20,
That's
or
true.
maybe even. I was in a discussion the other day, and people were talking about life expectancy to perhaps reach 115 to 120 years. And they're not kidding when they have these discussions. They look at all of the things that have gone on before now, the things that are taking place now. I have a friend who has had 2 heart transplants and a kidney transplant. He works every day and he's enjoying a high quality of life, he and his family, and he is kind of like a role model, if you will, for organ donor and transplantation. For example, I urge people, especially black people, but especially all people, and I may designate or mention black, white, and those kind of things, but I'm kind of fortunate. I feel that I am indeed a part of the main, and that every man's death diminishes me. I know for whom the bells toll. They toll for thee. I know that there are different racial, gender, attitudes, black, white, Asian, whatever it is that people get cast into. But I used to say a lot of times in group meetings that I love to meet a man who is proud that he is black. Black's a beautiful color.
Yes, indeed.
And that's a fact. But I also like to meet a man who's proud that he is white. Every man ought to have some color.
That's
Just
right.
about any one of them is all right. But what I really like to meet is a person who strictly understands that it's character that makes the person and not color that makes the man. So all of us have some of the same human elements. We all come from the origin of something. And let's go to the phone and see what our caller got to say. Caller, are you there?
Yeah, how you doing, Congressman Davis?
I am fine, James. How are you?
Okay, now, first of all, I want to say, how John McCain and Jimmy Carter doing? But, okay, what I'm trying to say, Congressman Davis, I just want to know how Jimmy Carter doing and John McCain doing.
Well, I know more about how John McCain is doing right now because he's been in the news every day in terms of a discovery that he has a brain tumor. There are some people who believe that certain conditions are not reversible. They call that irreversible. And that, you're only going to be around a certain amount of time. There are others who believe that there is the power of intervention and that the almighty ruler of the universe can change what is normally expected. And given that, I don't know how long the good senator might be here.
Congress.
Yes.
Okay, then, like you said, people got their own disagree. Now, you know the media, right?
Yes.
Now, some of the people in the media don't like OJ getting out, but some people like him getting out. Like you should always say, people got their disagree and not agree about OJ Simpson. I think for getting out in October somewhere, and like you always said, people got their they on disagree and not agree, like you always say.
Well, let me just tell you about O.J. I hope that O.J. Simpson is going to be able to live the rest of his life in useful service to humanity. I don't have any particular feelings because I don't know if he was guilty or not of killing the young lady who was his wife. Some people still think he got off with that, and that he actually had done it.
And then some people don't. Some people in the media don't like that. And then it's God. God is one to make. God is in control. God is in control, Congressman Davis.
Well, since we believe
The media
in our
about,
system,
if they didn't want to OJ, why they put it on the media?
all right, well, we'll see. Somebody else probably got an idea about it, so we'll go to them,
Okay, cause y'all have
all
a good
right,
day.
and see what they've got to say. Caller number 2.
Yes, Congressman,
Yes, sir.
can you hear me?
Yes, I do.
Ray. Said it's friend Ray and say hello to the young lady sitting next to you.
Yes, sir.
And you know what? For the last 20 years, communities have tried to cure crime and all the bad stuff that goes around in the neighborhood by themselves. That hasn't worked for 25 years or longer. Why don't the best minds of every community in Chicago get together, north, south, east, and west, get together, put their heads together, and they'll be able to find some solution, because not the communities that have gone bad aren't going to go good in 10 minutes. They haven't gone good in 25 years. And
I'm going to ask my guest.
they say it takes a village to raise a boy. Well, maybe it takes a city to raise the people in the city.
Well, let me ask her how she feels about what you just said.
Well, I think that's an excellent idea to get the best minds together to come up with a plan. I think that it has been a long time in the making. These problems that we're in did not happen overnight. But I think, again, when we look to the root problem, it's family structure, because we've tried a lot of different things over the years. But just restoring the black man to his rightful position, the congressman right now is putting together an awesome summit for the state of the African American male. And I think that that's really the key that we're looking for. So yes, getting the greatest minds, the brightest and the best, the talented 10th together is awesome. But we really have to stay focused on the root cause of all of our issues.
But let me ask you this.
Sure.
Are we aware of any time in the history of man when the same problems we discuss today have not been the problems of that time? I mean, even in biblical days,
Right.
the Old Testament is just filled with transgressions and what would happen to people when they went astray. You know, if my people, which are called by my name, will humble themselves and pray and seek my face, then will I hear from heaven and heal their land. Now that was uttered thousands of years ago. And we still have, I think, some of the same problems.
I agree. You know, the problems go way back really to the garden, if we want to go that far back, you know.
Yep. Well, since we believe, many of us, and some people believe differently,
Right.
I have a need to believe in something. And I'd rather believe in what I've been taught and what I've heard
Okay.
than to believe in nothing else. I mean, so I don't know much else about the way the world may have gotten started,
Right.
except what they wrote in Genesis and what James Weldon Johnson has written this magnificent poem about in terms of how the world got started. If that is true, even when there were only a few people on earth, Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel, and I understand they had another brother named Seth, but we didn't hear much about him because he wasn't known for anything, so
Right.
he didn't do nothing. So if these disagreements, and if man or woman had a proclivity to try and search out things that they had not experienced or didn't know about, to try and do them anyway, even though they had been told not to do it, does not the natural curiosity of man have him seeking things they've never known before?
Well, absolutely. I think that the mind has a strong drive to correct and recorrect itself over, many years. And so when we look historically, even when we have to, well, put it this way, we see that the way that we're doing things now is not working. So that automatically makes us venture off and, well, what can work? What can produce the type of changes that we all seek? And so what I found out is that we have to, again, just restore the male's role. That's really the bottom line.
What about these people who believe that if we just kept multiplying people and didn't anything happen to get rid of some of them, that we become overpopulated, and that in and of itself becomes, and there are people who have that kind of theory, who
Yes.
say that it's natural for the evolution of man to reach the point, and in order to keep the earth balanced, you got to get rid of some of these people. And of course, one way for people to be gotten rid of is for other people to kill them. I mean, to be violent. Let's see what this caller. Caller, are you there? Yes, caller, are you there?
Hello, Dr. Davis, U.S. Representative 7th District. There's one problem in terms of the black community we keep coming back to, and no other group was done this way. We was brought to this country involuntary, and when you look at it, they took away our culture away from us. And when you look and you see in terms of the mind and the spirit it had done, one of the first things they did was took away our name. And if you know anything about in terms of the history of the name, a true African name, you could tell something about the family, you could tell what part of the country they come from, and it goes so forth and so forth on. And when they did those sort of things, they stripped away certain types of problems. And we're going to keep on having certain types of problems until certain things is acknowledged. And just maybe do certain things that we could do to make things better. One of the things we look at in schools, now I'm not talking about necessarily they should teach black history. The first thing we could always encourage family, at least teach their family history, and maybe we'd be right on the right course. I just want to hear your guest remarks.
Yeah, I want to hear that too. Did you ever have a different name?
I did.
Okay.
I did. I had a different name, but once I did research and I really became more aware of just who I was as a person and my history, my roots, I felt that, like the caller just said, a name with meaning was more fitting for me. And so when I found out the meaning of Amalia, made strong by Yah, I said, oh, that's perfect, because names and just words in general hold a lot of power.
All right, so, there's some agreement that names are often chosen to convey at least what parents would hope I have a friend whose name was Judge C. Watkins. His name is Judge Charles Watkins. And a lot of people would often think he was a judge when we would be somewhere and he would be introduced. And his brother's name is General Watkins. And he always say that his mother told them, say, when you boys were born, I decided if I named you something, that you might become something and that you might live up to the name. Now, they both did become something. I mean,
Right.
Judge was Dr. Judge Watkins, who used to run the Med Tech program at Malcolm X College. As a matter of fact, he conceived it, developed it. He was vice president of the Cook County Teachers Union. He was actively engaged and involved in a lot of things. And his brother General was involved in developing, working, raising a family, and doing all this. So her prognosis may have meant something because they both became something. They both did something. And if they had been named something else, I don't know, they may have done something else. Caller, are you there? Go right ahead.
Good afternoon, Congressman.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to have a comment and a question. They kind of work together. The comment is that belief and knowing are very different things, and knowing is what I think we're after here. And I'd like to ask your guest, I know she got into it because she believed that she could help the community, help our community. I know I did the same thing. But after a while, after believing things that I was doing in my community were making a difference, and the people I was working with were making a difference.
Well, that sounds like a good question for you.
Let me just finish up.
Okay.
But I've come to know that he's kind of pushed back the birds there in terms of continuing the kinds of rampant violence that we go against, that we stand against, we stand together against, but it can't stop. Just like we do projects, we destroy, we do work, it goes the other way. It's just, how do you, after knowing, first believing that you could make a difference, and knowing that it's not always true, how do you reconcile it and keep going?
Okay, we've only got about a minute and a half, so I better let her try to respond in that time.
Sure. You were breaking up a bit, but I'm going to try to address the bits that I did here. So I think, with believing, that does take you to a certain place. But the knowing is like, once you see that certain things aren't working, you have to come back to the drawing table and keep modifying your plan each time and not giving up. And so when you talk about knowing, okay, if this doesn't work, what else does work? Not just doing the same thing over and again, expecting different results. And I hope that answers your question.
So you're saying when people say that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results, that is a philosophy that is not going to generate positive outcomes if you act that way and think that way and keep doing it.
Exactly. You have to think outside of the box. And sometimes when you have that belief and it's very strong, you're not going to get discouraged. You're going to find a way. You have to find a way.
Well, unfortunately, good things have to come to an end. This discussion will have to end, and we'll pick it up in some other way, either on radio or, again, here. So let me thank our listeners, let me thank our viewers, let me thank our callers, and we've had a very interesting discussion. Hopefully I'll see you next week, and we'll talk some of the same talk. Until then, be good to yourself and even better. to somebody else. See you next week.